In the wee hours of yesterday, Saturday, July 30, 2011, we've had an unfortunate incident occurring in the history of Guyana's civil aviation sector. Caribbean Airlines Flight 523 overshoot the runway at the Capt.Gerry International Airport, resulting in some degree of tragedy. Luckily, unfortunately, there were no fatalities. With me today is Capt.Gerry Gouveia. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Roraima Group of Companies. And we all know that Captain Gouveia has vast experience, not just in the aviation sector, but he also has vast experience in search and rescue, medical evacuation services, among others, integrally related to the aviation sector. Among those, national defense and security, political science, tourism, aviation security management, aircraft search and rescue, aircraft accident investigation. I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Captain Gouveia, for giving me this opportunity to speak with you soon after such an incident. Let's deal specifically with yesterday's incident. Unfortunate, isn't it?
Very unfortunate, and but I think we all should be very grateful that we had no loss of life. It was a miracle, I will tell you that we had that. In fact, the emergency response systems at the airport didn't necessarily contribute to that fact. That was particularly a miracle, that nobody died, that the aircraft did not burn. But it was in fact that.
Okay, but of course, you're just one of many. You've joined the chorus of persons who would have referred to what subsequently happened prior to the aircraft landing. You would join the chorus of those persons who have referred to it as a miracle. However, let's deal specifically with what took place possibly after this emergency occurred. Let's first, let me ask you to be, I know over the years you've been pretty candid about Guyana's search and rescue mechanisms, both at the international airport and domestic airfields. Could you assess to me what took place subsequent to the unfortunate incident?
Well, first of all, I want to say to you, there's a lot of rumors going around that the airport there was a lot of heavy fog, there was a lot of heavy rain, and that was not true. There was light rain, there was no heavy fog at the airport. And also to make it very clear, the Timeri Airport, the Capt.Gerry International Airport, is an approved international airport for both day and night operations. And so there's all the lighting facilities, there's all the air traffic control facilities. So there's no technical shortcomings, and the issue with the weather was there as well. So there was no heavy rain, there was no heavy fog. And certainly the investigators will tell us what happened. But these airports, over the years, you're very right. I have actually, because my life is in an airplane, I've always been extremely concerned. And I myself was a victim of an aircraft accident. And I have been the head of the local private sector search and rescue. So I've been to many of these accidents. And I was always very concerned about the response time, the capabilities, the equipment, and so on. And I've been very public in years gone by. But I will tell you, this time, the systems worked, because over the last, I would say, 5 years, we have, in a way, the government is listening to the private sector in all the sectors, but particularly in here. And maybe some of us will believe maybe not fast enough, not enough. But I have been living and I've been seeing the changes as what was happening. And the Timeri Airport, for example, I've been going through all of the emergency response training and exercises and so on. And the last exercise they did, believe it or not, duplicated exactly this incident. Exactly where this aircraft ended up is where the last exercise was done. And this time the fire and rescue service at the international airport, we just had a brand new state-of-the-art fire tender put in operation at the airport. I was there during the commission of it, and the fire and rescue team at Timeri responded instantaneously. The airport, the tower will be the first one that will trigger the emergency systems, and the systems was triggered. I mean, I was called seconds after this aircraft went off the runway. And so this aircraft went off the runway sometime after 1:30 a.m. I was at the airport at 2:20, myself and the president. President responded immediately. And so at the highest level we had a national response at the state level, where all the hospitals were put on alert. But the airport system itself worked. The tower activated these systems. The airport management, emergency management system kicked in while the fire people were there. The army responded, the police responded. But I think people need to understand this, that we have 4, 5, 6 landings every day at the international airport. And so while the fire engine, everybody's on precaution of it all the time. If it happens, a lot of times passengers for minutes are going to be on their own, especially if the aircraft exit the airport perimeters, which is what happened this time. And so people, the aircraft crew had to do the work that they did. The flight attendants had to deploy all of the chutes, and they did. The passengers then followed the instructions, but you remember the aircraft was in darkness. And a lot of panic started to happen. The crew did as much as the cabin attendant crews and so on. They're highly trained. The Caribbean Airlines crews are highly trained. And so they are the initial responders to get people off the aircraft. And the people were doing that. And then before the police and the army got involved. So I would say to you that this time, I was actually quite pleased with the emergency response system at the international airport, and I was overwhelmed with the response at the state level. You had every senior functionary, from the chief of staff to the police commissioner to the head of the our fire and rescue service. Every single senior person was on the ground at the airport, and you had massive army presence and massive police presence. It was unprecedented for Guyana and for Caribbean Airlines. They have never had anything like this happen in their history. But it happened here in Guyana, and we had a massive response, something that a person who always been very critical, will say to you that this time I think we did as much as we could have done with our national resources. And every single minister of the government, the Minister of Health himself, were on the ground at the airport. And with a team of doctors, the hospitals were mobilized. So what we needed to do more, I believe there's a lot more work need to be done in terms of exercising the systems. We need to do it more often.
You're speaking with more simulation exercises.
That's right. I think now we do it once every 2 years for a major one, which is due anytime now. But we probably need to do that more often. And not to belabor the point, but to say this to you that, we hope that accidents will never happen. And we pray to God it don't happen. But if it happens, this is the perfect accident to happen. I'll tell you why. Because we had no loss of life. But the lessons we will learn from this, because it's not just a physical event. It is one where it affected the minds of airline staff who have been working in this industry for 25 years. There are very few people like myself who have lived through aircraft accidents, who have gone to crash sites and see blood. And this time you had airline staff who innocently do their work every day. They're trained, but this here will give them a lesson that you could never learn in the best universities in the world. And so while you hope that accidents don't happen, the lessons we will learn from this will make us far better now.
We've examined what took place in terms of the emergency response. We're talking here about being proactive, and in terms of Guyana's signing on to international conventions as it relates to civil aviation safety and international transport safety. And we are signatory
Yes.
to those conventions. As it relates to ensuring the safety, recently we heard in the regional setting, some concerns being expressed about safety about airlines. What is being done locally, perhaps, to ensure that airlines are in conformity with internationally accepted safety standards?
I believe that Guyana particularly, over the last 7 years, we have done a complete reform of our aviation sector. And today, our regulations and our airlines, all the local airlines here in Guyana, and I'll tell you, and in the Caribbean, there's an amazing across the region raising of standards. There's CASAS, where you have regional authorities now that cross-check all the countries in the Caribbean. And so I would say to you, I have never, and I've been a pilot now, I've been in this industry for 35 years. I have no reservations about reassuring you and anyone else about the high level of safety. In fact, aviation has always been, and it remained one of the safest and most reliable forms of transportation in the history of the world. And the Caribbean, and particularly Guyana, our systems have improved. And I mean, when I first started here in Guyana back in the 70s, we were doing well, but we were not to the standard we are today. I would say to you in the last 5 to 7 years, it's been amazing. We still have a far way to go. The civil aviation still need to be, the capacity building the government still need to give them more personnel, the flight inspectors. We still need more resources. We need our interior airships done. But I will say to you, the traveling public should have no reason at all to be worried about aviation. Aviation remains the safest form of it. Unfortunately, the issue of human factor. The issue of human factor always kicks in. It still remains the highest contributor. It still remains the highest contributor to aviation events across the world, accident events. And continuously we have the scientists and the sociologists and the psychologists and the people, the safety management people, looking all the time to deal with these issues. This investigation will take all those things into consideration to see what is it that caused this accident. And so aviation in the Caribbean, aviation in Guyana remains undoubtedly an amazing, safe platform for transportation.
I know we've placed significant emphasis on what took place and what takes place, and there is a perception that what we're discussing obtains at the Capt.Gerry International Airport to Mary. But of course, there's the Ogle Aerodrome, which has also been transformed into an international airport. Are those safety standards the same?
Absolutely. The people who own Ogle Airport are people who own airlines, who operate it. And that airport is managed by Tony McDeasy, Lieutenant Colonel Tony McDeasy, who's an aviation professional of tremendous credibility and knowledge, and Malcolm Chanisu. And Ogle Airport, as it was being developed at all times to get to the international standard, to meet the standard of the Capt.Gerry International Airport, they have been dotting the I's and crossing the T's and putting all the safety standards. So we have actually been doing all the training, all the exercises at Ogle. Ogle is now going to be a model airport in the Caribbean when it comes not only to physical infrastructure and the aesthetics, but certainly in terms of the safety. There are new methods now being used, for example, at the ends of the runways. So if airplanes lost their brakes, or they hydroplane in the runway and they run off the end of the runway, their catchment areas where there's soft surfaces to stop the airplane from actually accelerating as they run off the runway. We have that at Ogle already. We probably need to look at it at Timeri Airport, at Capt.Gerry International Airport. So Ogle is actually far ahead in terms of these safeties, and Ogle work very close with the international airport at Timeri. So in general, both of our international airports, I believe, they operate at very high standards, both of them. In fact, Timeri is approved by ICAO. They just went through an audit by ICAO for the certification. So there are some people who are saying that Timeri is not approved, but let me tell you something. Delta Airlines, which we manage, which we handle at the airport, Roraima Airways, Delta Airlines will not come to Guyana if our international airport did not meet the standards that was required. And people need to understand that Caribbean Airlines themselves, an airline that embraced tremendously high standards. Remember, this is an airline that got one of the best safety records in the history of aviation in the world. And people must understand that American Airlines ran off the runway in Jamaica. Air France ran off the runway in Toronto. And so, unfortunately, we face these challenges in aviation. So this is not unique to Guyana. It's not unique to Caribbean Airlines. But these are challenges that we meet, we face, and we train to overcome them. The challenge we face at our international airport, that this is really the first time in the history of aviation in Guyana that we've actually faced this in a practical way. And the lessons we will learn, both from the fire people, the army, the police, the airport management systems. Ogle will learn a lot. Suriname will learn a lot from it. Suriname actually had a huge airliner crash on landing one morning going in. They lost a lot of their senior people. And again, you see, when all these systems that are there is to make sure that the pilots follow procedures. A plane landing ought to be at a particular speed, at a particular height before he lands. And so those are all factors that are going to be taken into the investigation.
speaking about the investigation, what are we to expect over the next 48, 72 hours? We've seen members of the National Transport Safety Board, of which you're a graduate
Yes.
yourself, are coming in to assist with investigations. What are we to expect in the coming days?
Well, I will tell you, when you have an incident like this, the whole aviation industry across the world wakes up. Because remember, every day there are hundreds of thousands of these airplanes that are transporting people. And so the haste to find the reason is so important, because you need to find out whether something was wrong with the aircraft so that you could fix it in other planes before you put other people at. And so I could assure you, Michael, that every effort is being made and they're working around the clock to find the reason behind this. And so there's absolutely, and I think people need to understand that all the investigators are on the job. They're doing the job. They're digging into the reasons behind this. They're interviewing the pilots, the passengers, looking at the mechanics of the plane, looking at the airport, and very shortly the results are going to start coming out to make sure that we are able to prevent these things from happening again.
I think commendable too is the efforts that, and you spoke about the professionalism, the training, the high safety standards of Caribbean Airlines. I think that too was commendable subsequent to what took place. I think commendable too is the reaction and the response of the Trinidad. Outstanding was that of the Guyana government, but also commendable as well is and measures up is that of the Trinidad and Tobago government. Prime Minister Kamala Persad herself.
Yeah.
She's in Guyana as we speak.
No, I must say, I mean, in America, when these things happen, unless it's really a big, gigantic, this is really big for the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, President Jack Dio himself responded with such care. I mean, when he got to the airport, he was there dealing with every passenger, reassuring them. I saw some things that bothered me. I saw, for example, I think we need to do a lot more sensitizing of the taxi drivers, for example. People who responded from the airport got to the crash site, and there are reports that they were actually exploiting the people coming off the aircraft. I am deeply annoyed and deeply hurt that Guyanese taxi drivers based at that airport could actually go there and be charging people to bring them back, rescuing people and doing that. That we need to sensitize people like that.
Of course, this incident that's out there, this apparently, based on the information we've received, it was a one-off incident. I wouldn't want to paint.
No. I am painting it. I'm painting it, and I'm saying to you, as part of our training, as part of learning from this exercise, we need to get all our taxi drivers, everybody, to understand across Guyana. When you see people in distress, this is where your social conscience comes in. This is where your sense of responsibility for your fellow man.
Your humanness.
That's right.
Yes.
And we need to do that. And we also need as well to talk more about the emotional content of people coming out of these kind of events, because I did see, which annoyed me a little bit as well, when people were coming out of the aircraft and getting back into the airport, somebody had them lining up, coming to a desk, like if they were talking about lost bags. I mean, and I got there and we said to them, put the people to sit down. I mean, so I'm not saying to you the system is perfect. So we need to spend some attention to deal with how we deal with people coming off such a dramatic and traumatic event. How do we deal with them emotionally? You need to put them to lie down. Because people are going to start going into shock as well. A lot of times people lead that event. They get there, their adrenaline is pumping, and then you give them a few minutes after or hour afterward. And we did see that at the airport, where people started to, then as it started dawning on them how close this thing was, that people started going into shock. Luckily, by that time, we had the full medical contingent. Dr. Ramsey, his entire team at the airport that was able to deal with that. But so there are some things that I was not happy with. I was not happy that, for example, when I was there, that enough public announcement was not happening. That we needed to, and those are some in the new training that are to learn from this experience. It's not just dealing with the airplane. It's not just, we need to be able to, how do we deal psychologically and emotionally with the trauma that will be as a result of people coming off that. I don't think we did very, very well in the early stage, but certainly it corrected itself as we went along.
All right. We've examined what obtained immediately after the crash. We've examined what is to be expected. But let's, in the closing moments of this interview, possibly look as we examine, as we look to pick up the pieces from this moving onward. And this is possibly in closing.
Well, the good thing is that I have been always very concerned about, for example, our emergency response. I'm happy to tell you that I understand that the government has actually fixed the Bell 412 at the airport. And so that Bell 412 and the pilots who are being trained now will be an important part of our future emergency response systems. Because if that airplane, for example, had gone far into the field, if it's gone across the river, so we need. And I'm happy to say to you that while we may have shortcomings, I am seeing a serious effort on behalf of Minister Robeson Ben, for example, to keep working with his cabinet colleagues, because we are meeting on a constant basis with the Ministry of Transport, and we are putting those things in place, and we
You've
are
been
learning
very
from it.
vocal about that Bell 412.
Very, very,
Yes.
very. And I'm very pleased to say to you that that the government has responded and they are fixed. We are keeping that aircraft now. That airplane is a backbone for life and death in our emergency systems, whether it's search and rescue in the jungle, whether it's even at the airport. And in fact, I know for sure that the president had, even though we have our Bell 206 helicopters, I know those helicopters were placed and they were ready to respond immediately to medevac people out of the airport to the city. My own plane was at the airport, so when I went there, we had my plane ready to, if we had to start medevacing people as well down to the city. But they were using Diamond Hospital, which is a wonderful facility. But you had the GDF helicopters on standby. You had my planes at the airport on standby, and I was there ready to start moving people. So, but I think the future of it means that we will learn a lot from this, all of us. So the Ogle Airport, the Temeri Airport, the entire aviation industry will sit together as a result of this. And I am actually quite pleased with Trinidad. I'm actually quite pleased with the Caribbean Airlines officials and their response. And I think together we will work together. I think that this incident will really be a catalyst of pulling us together.
Capt.Gerry Gouveia, Chief Executive Officer of the Roraima Group of Companies. Again, thanks for affording us this time to discuss this very important issue
Thank you very much.
at a time as this. Thanks for being a part of this program.